Why are you still here? The dying man rasped from the cold concrete, his face the color of ash, his hand trembling against his chest. You don't know me. Emma looked down at the $8 in her palm, every cent she had until Friday. Lily's milk money, bus fare, gone the moment she walked into that store. She crouched down anyway. Nobody else moved. The attendant watched through the glass with his arms crossed. A man at the pump looked deliberately away. A Hells Angels biker was dying on the ground, and the whole world just kept walking. Emma didn't walk. That decision cost her everything she had and gave her back something she didn't know she'd lost. If this story moves you, please subscribe to our channel and follow Emma's journey all the way to the end. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Emma had learned a long time ago that the difference between surviving and drowning wasn't always money. Sometimes it was the 30 seconds you spent deciding whether or not to care about a stranger. She was walking home from her evening shift at Manny's Diner when she made that decision, and she had no idea it was going to cost her everything she had left. It was a Tuesday night, the kind that presses down on your shoulders like something invisible and heavy. Emma's feet ached inside her worn sneakers. She had been on the floor since 4 in the afternoon, refilling coffee cups and taking orders from people who barely looked up from their phones long enough to acknowledge she existed. Her uniform smelled like grease and dish soap. Her ponytail had come half undone somewhere around the 8th hour. She didn't care. She just wanted to get home, check on Lily, and fall into the couch before her alarm went off at 5:30 the next morning for her day shift at the laundromat. She had $8 in her apron pocket. Tips had been slow that night. The regular crowd hadn't come in, and the few tables she had gotten were filled with college kids who ordered water and split a plate of fries. She had smiled through every single minute of it because smiling was free and because Lily needed her to keep that job. $8. She'd already calculated it in her head the way she always did, automatically, like breathing. $2 for the bus in the morning leaving 6. $6 meant she could get Lily a carton of milk and maybe a small box of crackers for her lunch. She couldn't buy both. She'd already decided she would skip lunch herself, again. That was fine, she'd done it before. She cut through the side street the way she always did, past the corner store that was always half lit and the fence that someone had painted over 3 times, but the graffiti always came back. She was maybe 2 blocks from her building when she passed the Sunoco station on Callaway Street. That's when she heard it. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even very loud. It was more like a wet, labored groan, the kind of sound a person makes when their body is fighting against itself and losing, low and guttural and wrong. The kind of sound that grabs you by the spine whether you want it to or not. Emma stopped walking. She turned her head toward the sound without making the conscious decision to do so. Her body just did it. There was a man on the ground beside one of the gas pumps. He was enormous, easily 6'3", built like someone who had spent decades doing physical labor. He wore a black leather vest covered in patches, and even from 10 feet away, Emma could read the words on the back, Hells Angels. His face was the color of old ash. His left hand was pressed against his chest, fingers curled inward. His jaw was tight, his teeth clenched, and he was breathing in short, shallow pulls that sounded like they hurt. Nobody was helping him. There were 2 other people at the station. A young man at the pump across from him who glanced over once and then looked deliberately away, suddenly very interested in watching the gas numbers tick up. And the attendant, a heavy-set man in his 50s named Ray, who Emma had seen 100 times, who was standing behind the glass of his booth, watching with his arms crossed like he was watching a TV show he didn't care about. Emma walked faster toward the entrance. "Hey," she called out. "Hey, that man needs help. Call 911. Ray looked at her through the glass. He didn't move. "Did you hear me?" Emma said, pushing through the door. "That man outside is having a heart attack." Ray uncrossed his arms and leaned slightly on the counter. "Lady, I don't know what that is out there. I'm not getting involved with Hells Angels business. You shouldn't either." "He's having a medical emergency," Emma said. Her voice was flat and clear. "Call 911. Now." "You call 911, Ray said. "That's what cell phones are for." Emma already had her phone out. She dialed as she went back through the door and crouched down near the man on the concrete. Up close, he was even bigger than she had thought. He had a gray beard, a thick neck, and hands like 2 slabs of raw meat. There was a chain on his belt and a ring on nearly every finger. A tattoo crept up the left side of his neck. But his eyes, when they found her face, were frightened in a way that had nothing to do with toughness or reputation. They were just a person's eyes, scared and in pain and looking for help. "Hey," Emma said, and she made her voice as calm as she possibly could. "Hey, I'm here. I called 911. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" He tried to speak. What came out was barely a word. Chest. "Okay," Emma said. "Okay, chest pain. Is it spreading down your arm?" He nodded. Once. Tight and jerky. Emma looked at the attendant booth, then at the store window. She thought about aspirin. Her grandmother had told her once, her grandmother, who had been a home health aide for 30 years, that aspirin could buy time during a heart attack, that it could thin the blood enough to matter. She stood up. She went back inside the store. Ray looked at her like she was a problem he didn't want. "Do you have aspirin?" Emma asked. "Aisle 3, Ray said. "You gonna pay for it?" Emma didn't answer her. She went to aisle 3. She found the aspirin, a small travel pack, $3.49. She grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler near the back, $1.79. She brought them to the counter and put her last $8 on it without a word. Ray rang it up. She got back 42 cents in change. She didn't bother counting it. She was back outside in under 90 seconds. The man's condition had gotten worse. His color had gone from ash to something closer to gray-green. His breathing was shorter. His hand on his chest was shaking. "Hey," Emma said, crouching again. "I've got aspirin. Can you chew it?" "Not swallow, chew it. It's important." He looked at her. There was something behind his eyes, not just fear now, something else, something like disbelief that she was still there. "Why?" he managed between labored breaths. "Are you still here?" "Because you need help," Emma said simply. "Open your mouth, please." He did. She put the aspirin on his tongue. She opened the water bottle and helped him take a small sip to wash it down. He winced. She kept her hand steadied near his arm, not touching it, just close enough that he could feel she was there. "What's your name?" she asked, keeping him conscious, keeping him present. "Hawk," he said. The word came out rough and ragged. "I'm Emma," she said. "Hawk, I need you to stay with me. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay. Just keep breathing." "You don't know that," he said. His voice had a dark, exhausted edge to it that told her this wasn't the first time life had put him in a bad position. But there was also something almost amused in it, like he was surprised she was trying. "No," Emma admitted, "but I'm going to act like I do until we find out otherwise. Deal?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his face. It wasn't a smile exactly, but it was close. "Deal," he said. She stayed beside him. She kept him talking, small things, stupid things, whatever came to mind. She asked him if he'd eaten. She asked him if he'd been riding today. She asked him where he was coming from. He answered in fragments, but he answered. And every time his eyes started to drift, she said his name, and they came back. The ambulance arrived 9 minutes later. To Emma, it felt like an hour. The paramedics came in fast and efficient, and Emma stepped back to give them room. She watched them work, her arms folded tight across her chest, the cold of the night finally reaching her, now that the adrenaline was beginning to release its grip. One of the paramedics, a young woman with red hair and a no-nonsense expression, looked at Emma as they got the man stabilized and onto the stretcher. "You gave him aspirin?" "Yes," Emma said. "My grandmother always said." "Your grandmother was right," the paramedic said quietly. "That was the right call." She paused just for a second. "Good job." Then they were loading him into the ambulance. The doors closed, the lights flashed, and just like that, Hawk was gone. Emma stood alone in the parking lot of the Sunoco station on Callaway Street. She looked down at her hand, 42 cents. She put it in her pocket, turned around, and walked the 2 remaining blocks home. She told herself she'd done the right thing. She told herself that was enough. She told herself not to think about the milk she couldn't buy now, or the $2 she didn't have for the piece, or the way Lily's inhaler was running low, and the refill cost $38, and insurance didn't cover it fully, and she didn't know how she was going to handle that by the end of the week. She told herself all of that was fine, because it had to be. Because what else could she do? She let herself into the apartment quietly. The living room was dark except for the nightlight in the hall, the little turtle one that Lily had picked out herself at the dollar store 2 years ago and refused to give up. Emma set her purse down on the kitchen table and stood in the middle of the room for a moment, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the dark and the quiet. Then she went to Lily's room and opened the door, just a crack. Lily was asleep. She was 7 years old and she slept the way all 7-year-olds do. Completely, totally with her whole body. One arm flung out and her dark hair spread across the pillow like she'd been making a snow angel. Her breathing was even. Her chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. Emma stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she pulled the door closed gently and went to the bathroom to wash her face. She looked at herself in the mirror. She was 34 years old. She had dark circles under her eyes that didn't go away, no matter how much sleep she got, which wasn't very much. She had fine lines at the corners of her eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago before Marcus left, before the second job, before the car broke down, and the landlord raised the rent and the medical bills started stacking up on the kitchen counter like a physical accusation. She didn't feel sorry for herself. She was too tired for that. She brushed her teeth. She set her alarm. She lay down on top of the covers still in her work clothes because she was too exhausted to change. And then she thought about Hawk, about the way he'd looked at her when he asked why she was still there, about the fact that not a single person, not the man at the gas pump, not Ray in the booth, had moved to help him. She thought about what it must feel like to be lying on the ground in pain and having people just look away. She thought about her grandmother, about the way she used to say it like a prayer almost. Kindness costs nothing, baby, but it can change everything. I hope you're right, Grandma, Emma whispered to the ceiling, because right now I've got 42 cents and a bus to catch in the morning. She closed her eyes. She didn't know it yet. She had no way of knowing. But in a hospital across town, a man named Hawk was lying in a bed with an IV in his arm and oxygen on his face, and the first words he said to the nurse, who asked if there was anyone they should call, were, "Yeah, find out who she is, the woman at the Sunoco. Find her." He said it like it mattered, like it was the most important thing in the world, because to him it was. Emma's alarm went off at 5:30. She hit it before it finished its first ring, a habit so deeply ingrained it happened before she was even fully awake. She lay still for exactly 30 seconds, her eyes on the ceiling, doing the thing she always did, running the numbers. The day's obligations lined up in her mind like entries in a ledger. Bus fare, Lily's school lunch, the half box of oatmeal in the cabinet, the overdue electric bill, the inhaler, the $8 that were gone. She sat up. The apartment was quiet around her in the gray pre-dawn. She stood, changed into her laundromat uniform, dark pants, a polo shirt that used to be navy but had faded to a strange dusty blue, and went to the kitchen to start coffee. She found the can was almost empty. She stretched what was left to make one cup, and she drank it, standing at the kitchen counter, her hands wrapped around the mug, looking at nothing. She heard Lily's feet hit the floor at 6:15. Small, soft sounds moving down the hall, then the creak of the bathroom door, then the shuffle of slippers on the kitchen floor. Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, the ones with the little foxes on them, slightly too small now, but she still loved them. Her hair was a spectacular disaster. She had her mother's dark eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin, and she looked at Emma with that particular brand of morning sincerity that only children are capable of. "Did you sleep?" Lily asked. Emma looked at her daughter. "Some," she said. "Did you? I dreamed about a whale," Lily said, climbing up onto her chair at the kitchen table. "It was blue, and it was friendly." "That sounds nice," Emma said. "It was," Lily said seriously. "You were there too. You were riding it." Emma almost smiled. "Was I?" "You looked happy," Lily said. She picked up her spoon and looked at the bowl Emma had set out. "Is there cereal?" "Almost out," Emma said, pouring the last of the box into the bowl. "I'll get more this weekend." Lily didn't complain. She never complained. That was one of the things that quietly broke Emma's heart on a regular basis, the way Lily had learned at 7 years old not to ask for things. The way she ate what was there and didn't mention what wasn't. The way she watched her mother's face carefully reading the temperature of the room, adjusting herself accordingly. Children shouldn't have to do that. 7-year-olds should be able to want things and ask for them and believe at least most of the time that the wanting would be answered. Emma poured herself second half cup of the weak coffee and said nothing. It was Lily who broke the silence. Mom, she said, her spoon pausing above her bowl, did something happen last night? Emma looked at her. Why do you ask that? Lily tilted her head. You have the look. What look? The one where you're thinking about something you're not going to tell me, Lily said. Emma stared at her daughter for a moment. Then she sat down across from her at the table. I helped someone last night, she said. On the way home, a man was sick and I helped him. Lily considered this. Is he okay? I think so, Emma said. I hope so. Did he say thank you? Emma thought about that, about the ambulance doors closing, the lights flashing, the empty parking lot. Not exactly, she said, but that's okay. That's not why you help people. Lily thought about this very seriously for a moment, the way she thought about most things. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied. Grandma used to say that, she said. Emma's chest tightened. Yeah, she said softly. She did. Lily went back to her cereal. Emma watched her, and for a moment the morning felt almost still, almost bearable, almost like something that could be gotten through 1 hour at a time the way it always was. She didn't know that 3 miles away in the ICU of St. Michael's Medical Center, a man with a gray beard and a leather vest draped over the back of his chair was making a phone call. His voice was low and hoarse, and the person on the other end listened without interrupting. When Hawk finished talking, there was a brief silence. Then the voice on the other end said, You're sure? I'm sure, Hawk said. Find her and tell the brothers. He ended the call and laid his phone on the blanket across his lap. He looked at the ceiling. He thought about a woman crouching next to him on cold concrete, completely alone, giving him the last of what she had without hesitation, without knowing him, without expecting a single thing in return. He had lived a long and complicated life. He had seen remarkable things. He had also seen the worst that people were capable of. But he couldn't remember the last time someone had surprised him the way Emma had surprised him. He closed his eyes and thought about what he was going to do about that. And outside across the city, the sun was coming up on a Wednesday morning that Emma had no idea was about to become the last ordinary day of her life. She caught her bus with 45 seconds to spare. She pressed her card. She found a seat. She rested her head against the window and closed her eyes as the bus moved through the pale gray morning. She was thinking about the electric bill, about whether she could ask her supervisor at the laundromat for an advance, about whether Lily's teacher had noticed that Lily's winter coat was getting too small, and whether anyone had said anything. She was not thinking about Hawk. She was not thinking about what was already in motion. She was just trying to get through the day. That was all she was doing, exactly like every other day. She had no idea. The laundromat smelled the same way it always did, warm cotton and chemical sweetness, and something underneath that Emma had never been able to name, but that meant work, meant routine, meant another day getting through it. She clocked in at 7:02, 2 minutes late, and her supervisor, a compact woman named Patrice, who communicated mostly through sighs, looked at the clock and then at Emma without saying anything. Emma tied on her apron and got to work. The morning moved the way mornings at the laundromat always moved, in cycles, literally and figuratively. Load and sort, transfer, fold, repeat. There was a rhythm to it that Emma had stopped thinking about years ago. Her hands knew what to do. Her mind was free to wander or to worry, which for Emma amounted to the same thing. She was thinking about the electric bill when her coworker Darnell came up beside her at the folding table and nudged her elbow. You okay, Juan? He asked. You got the look. Emma blinked. Lily told me the same thing this morning. Smart kid, Darnell said. What happened? Nothing, Emma said. Then, because Darnell had known her for 2 years and had covered her shifts twice when Lily was in the hospital and had never once asked for anything in return, she said, I used my last $8 last night, helped a guy having what I think was a heart attack, outside the Sunoco on Callaway. Darnell stopped folding. A stranger? Yeah, with your last $8. It was aspirin and water, Darnell. It's not like I handed him my rent. Emma, his voice was quiet, not judgmental, just careful, the way you talk to someone you are worried about. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? Giving away what you don't have. She looked at him. He was on the ground, she said simply. His face was gray. Nobody was helping him. Darnell was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into the pocket of his jeans and pulled out a folded $20 bill and put it on the folding table between them without a word. Emma stared at it. "No," she said. "Emma, I mean it, Darnell, put that away." "It's not charity," he said. "It's a loan. Pay me back whenever." "I'm not taking your money." "Then consider it payment for the times you covered my Friday shift without asking questions." He pushed the 20 a half-inch closer to her. "Take it. Buy Lily her milk." Emma looked at the 20. She thought about Lily eating the last of the cereal this morning with the earnest concentration of a child who had quietly learned not to ask for more. She picked up the 20 and folded it once and put it in her apron pocket. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was tight. "Don't mention it," Darnell said. "I mean that literally. Don't mention it. Just fold your laundry." She almost laughed. Almost. They worked in silence for a while, and then her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She didn't recognize the number. She almost didn't answer. She rarely answered unknown numbers anymore because they were almost always someone wanting money she didn't have. But something made her pull the phone out, something she couldn't explain. "Hello. Is this Emma Calloway?" The voice on the other end was male. Deep, measured. Not aggressive, but not casual either. It carried a particular kind of weight, the weight of someone who was used to being listened to. Emma's hand tightened around the phone. "Who's asking?" "My name is Cole," the man said. "I'm calling on behalf of someone you helped last night. Outside the Sunoco station on Calloway Street." Emma went completely still. Around her, the laundromat kept moving, machines humming steam, rising, Darnell folding, but she had stepped out of all of it into some private, suspended moment. "How did you get my number?" she said. "The attendant at the station." "Ray." He remembered your face. "We have resources, Miss Calloway. I'm sorry if this feels intrusive. That's not the intention." "What is the intention?" Emma asked. "To say thank you," Cole said. "In person, if you'll allow it." Emma looked at Darnell, who was watching her with his eyebrows raised. She turned slightly away. "The man Hawk, is he okay?" Blah. There was a pause, just half a beat, but she caught it. "He's stable," Cole said. "He's going to recover. The doctor said the aspirin you gave him made a significant difference in the outcome. You need to understand that. What you did last night was not a small thing." Emma closed her eyes for a second. The relief was physical. She felt it in her shoulders and the back of her throat. "I'm glad he's okay," she said. "Ms. Calloway," Cole said, "Hawk would like to meet you, properly, when you're available. No pressure, no obligation. He simply wants to thank you face to face." Emma thought about 1,000 reasons to say no. She thought about the leather vest and the patches and the way the gas station attendant had said, "Don't get involved," like it was a simple, obvious thing. She thought about being a single mother with a daughter at home and the general wisdom of not getting involved with people whose reputation preceded them like thunder before a storm. Then she thought about a man's terrified eyes finding her face in a parking lot and asking her why she was still there. When, she said, she met Cole that evening after her shift at a diner called Rosie's, that she had passed 100 times but never been inside. She had changed out of her laundromat uniform in the bathroom at work into the clean blouse she kept in her locker for occasions that required more than a polo shirt. And she had told herself twice on the bus ride over that this was fine, that she was in a public place, that she had done nothing wrong and had nothing to fear. Cole was already there when she arrived. He was not what she had expected, though she couldn't have articulated exactly what she had expected. He was in his mid-50s, broad-shouldered, with a close-cropped gray beard and calm, steady eyes. He stood when she walked in, which surprised her. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. He looked like someone's uncle. He looked like the kind of man who coached Little League and fixed his neighbor's gutters on weekends. He also had a Hell's Angels patch on the vest hanging on the back of his chair. "Ms. Calloway," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Emma shook it. "Call me Emma," she said, because Ms. Calloway made her feel like she was being called into the principal's office. They sat. A waitress came and Emma ordered coffee black because it was the cheapest thing on the menu, and old habits died hard even when the moment called for something different. "How is he?" Emma asked. "Really?" Cole folded his hands on the table. "He had a heart attack," he said. "A serious one. The doctors said the aspirin you administered bought him critical time before the paramedics arrived. Without that intervention, the outcome could have been very different." He paused. the outcome probably would have been very different. Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I just did what anybody would do, she said. Cole looked at her. His expression was patient and direct and completely unambiguous. No, he said. You didn't. 3 people were present at that gas station, not counting Hawk. 2 of them did nothing. You were the only one who stopped. Emma said nothing. Hawk knows that, Cole said. He wants you to know that he knows. He doesn't owe me anything, Emma said. That's for him to decide, Cole said simply. They were quiet for a moment. Then Cole said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you stop? You were alone. It was late. Cole chose his words carefully. He was not the kind of person most people would feel comfortable approaching. Why didn't you just call 911 and keep walking? Emma thought about it. The real answer, not the polished one. Because, she finally said, my grandmother used to tell me that you can always find a reason not to help someone. There's always an excuse. The hour, the risk, what you don't have. And she said the moment you start listening to those excuses is the moment you stop being who you want to be. She paused, and his face was gray. I couldn't just walk away from a gray face. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Hawk's daughter used to say something like that. Emma looked up. He has a daughter. Something moved across Cole's face. Brief, but she caught it. He had a daughter, Cole said. Her name was Lily. The word landed in Emma's chest like something dropped from a height. She didn't speak. She passed away 4 years ago, Cole said. 17 years old. Asthma attack. They didn't catch it in time. His voice was steady, but it was the steadiness of someone who had practiced being steady about something that was not steady at all. Hawk hasn't been the same since. None of us have. Emma set down her coffee cup. Her hands were not entirely steady. I'm so sorry, she said, and she meant it in the way you mean things when words are wildly insufficient, but you say them anyway because the alternative is silence, and silence is worse. Your daughter's name, Cole said carefully. It's Lily too, isn't it? Emma stared at him. How do you know that? Ray told us what he remembered. He heard you on the phone with the dispatcher. You mentioned her, said you had to get home to your daughter. Said her name. Emma was quiet. She was processing the coincidence. If it was a coincidence and finding that it sat in her chest in a strange way, neither light nor heavy, but something in between. Something that felt like it meant something, even if she didn't know what yet. Hawk wants to meet you tomorrow, Cole said. He's being discharged in the morning. He asked if you'd come to a location he'll provide somewhere neutral, somewhere you'll feel safe. He'll have the address sent to you tonight. You can bring someone with you if you'd like. What does he want? Emma asked. To thank you, Cole said. Properly. You said that already, Emma said. What does that mean, properly? Cole met her eyes. It means the way Hawk does things, he said, which is thoroughly. That night, Emma sat on the edge of her bed long after Lily had gone to sleep and stared at the text message on her phone. It was an address, a community hall 2 miles away, and a time 10 o'clock the following morning. Nothing else. No explanation. No elaboration. She thought about not going. She thought about it seriously, turning the decision over in her mind like a stone she was looking under. She thought about what Darnell would say, probably something sensible and cautious and worth listening to. She thought about what her grandmother would say. She thought about gray eyes in a parking lot, in the word properly, in a dead girl named Lily, who had died of the same thing that kept Emma awake at night, worrying about her own daughter's breathing. She set her alarm for 7. She put her phone on the nightstand. She lay back on the pillow. She was going. She already knew she was going. She'd known it the moment Cole said the word properly. She'd known it the moment he said Hawk's daughter's name. She didn't entirely understand why, but she had learned a long time ago that some things don't make rational sense, and that doesn't make them wrong. She closed her eyes. She slept better than she had in weeks. She didn't know why that was either. The morning came fast. She got Lily ready for school, braided her hair, packed the lunch she'd been able to make with the 20 Darnell had given her. Walked her to the corner where the school bus stopped. Lily hugged her before she got on the bus the way she always did, both arms tight around Emma's waist, her face pressed into Emma's side for exactly 3 seconds. Have a good day, Mom, Lily said. You too, baby, how? Emma said. She watched the bus pull away. Then she turned and walked toward the community hall. She heard them before she saw them. She was still half a block away when she heard a low collective rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once, like the city itself had changed its breathing. She didn't know what it was at first. She slowed her pace. Then she turned the corner onto Merchant Street and stopped dead. There were motorcycles everywhere, not 10, not 20, dozens. Lined up along both sides of the street, parked in front of the community hall, extending back down the block farther than she could count from where she stood. Big bikes, all of them, Harleys mostly chrome catching the morning light. And there were men standing beside them, or sitting on them, or leaning against them. Men in leather vests, men with beards, men with tattoos on their necks, in their hands and their forearms, men who were clearly unmistakably Hell's Angels. Her feet stopped working. She stood on the sidewalk and counted. She got to 40 before she gave up counting. There were easily 100 of them, maybe more. Every single one of them looked at her when she rounded the corner. Not threateningly, not aggressively. They just looked. Like they had been waiting, like they had known exactly when she would arrive. One of them, a man she recognized as Cole, stepped forward from the group. He walked toward her with a calm, unhurried stride. "Emma," he said. She found her voice somewhere in the back of her throat. "What is this?" she said. "What is all of this?" "Hawk wanted to do this right," Cole said. "This is 100 men on motorcycles, Cole." "Give or take," Cole said, and the corner of his mouth moved slightly. "Why, Emma said. The word came out quiet and raw and entirely without pretense. Cole looked at her steadily. "Because you were the only one who stopped," he said. "And because Hawk believes that needs to be acknowledged in a way that's equal to what you did." Emma's throat tightened. "I bought $8 worth of aspirin," she said, and her voice broke slightly on the last word, not from grief, but from something she couldn't name, something that had been sitting compressed in her chest for a very long time and was choosing this precise moment to push upward. "No," Cole said quietly. "You decided his life was worth saving when nobody else did. That's not the same thing as buying aspirin." From behind Cole, from the entrance of the community hall, a figure appeared in the doorway. Large, broad, moving, slowly still recovering, still careful but upright. He wore his leather vest over a plain white shirt. His gray beard was the same. His hands were the same. But his face was different from the gray, frightened face she had seen on the concrete of a gas station parking lot. His face was present, alive, purposeful. Hawk walked toward her. He walked like it cost him something, but he was paying it without complaint. He stopped when he was 5 feet away. He looked at her. She looked at him. Neither of them spoke for a moment that stretched, being in silent between them, while 100 men stood still and waited. Then Hawk said in that low, rough voice that had managed to say her name even on the ground with a gray face, "You didn't have to stop." "I know," Emma said, "but you did." "Yes," he nodded slowly. His jaw moved like he was trying to find the right combination of words and kept finding them slightly inadequate. "I have a lot to say to you," he said finally. "But first, I need to say this. My daughter's name was Lily. She was the best person I ever knew. And the night you stopped to help me..." His voice dropped, went rough at the edges in a way that had nothing to do with a heart attack. "I thought about her, on the ground looking up at you, and I thought, this is what Lily would have done. This is exactly what she would have done." Emma pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry. She was not. She pressed her lips together and breathed through her nose and held it. "I want to thank you," Hawk said, "properly, which means I want to change your life the way you changed mine." He paused. "If you'll let me." The words hit her somewhere she hadn't been braced for. Not in the head where she'd been preparing arguments and cautions and reasonable adult hesitations, but somewhere lower, somewhere older. Somewhere that still believed, despite everything, that the world could surprise you in the direction of good. She looked at him. She looked at Cole. She looked at the 100 men on motorcycles who had showed up on a Wednesday morning to stand witness to the thanking of a woman who had spent her last $8 on aspirin for a stranger. "What does that mean?" Emma said. "Changed my life." Hawk reached into the inside pocket of his vest. He pulled out an envelope and held it out to her. Emma didn't take it immediately. She looked at it. Then she looked at him. "What's in there?" she asked. "Up in it," he said. Her hands were not entirely steady when she took the envelope. She turned it over. She opened the flap. She looked inside. The check was made out to Emma Calloway. The amount written in clean, clear numerals was $25,000. The world did not stop. Her heart did not stop. But something shifted, some tectonic thing deep in the foundation of everything she had been holding together with sheer force of will for 2 years, and she felt it move. She looked up at Hawk. "That's not all," he said. Emma's fingers tightened around the envelope. The check was still in her hand. $25,000. She had held a lot of things in her life, Lily, as a newborn, her grandmother's hand in the hospital, an eviction notice she'd gotten 2 years ago that she'd read 4 times because she couldn't believe what she was reading. She had never held anything that felt like this. Not like money, like oxygen. But Hawk had said that's not all, and those 3 words were sitting in her chest like a lit match. "What else?" Emma said. Hawk looked at Cole briefly, then back at her. "Let's go inside," he said. "There's more to say, and I'd rather say it sitting down. The doctors told me standing heroically in parking lots is off the agenda for the next few weeks." It surprised a short, involuntary sound out of her, almost a laugh. Almost. She pressed her lips together and nodded and followed him inside. The community hall had folding tables arranged in a rough semicircle, and someone had made coffee. Real coffee, the kind that smelled like it had been properly brewed rather than stretched from a can scraping its last grounds. Emma noticed that without meaning to. She noticed it the way you notice things when your senses are running at full capacity and picking up everything around you because your brain hasn't caught up to the situation yet. She sat across from Hawk. Cole sat to his right. 2 other men introduced as Danny and Reese sat at the edges of the table quiet and presented the way people are when they're there to witness something and they know it. Hawk put both his hands flat on the table. They were steady. Whatever the heart attack had taken out of him physically, it hadn't touched the thing behind his eyes, that particular quality of attention, of settled, unblinking focus. "I'm going to tell you something," he said, "that I don't tell many people, because it matters for what I want to say to you next." Emma folded the envelope and set it on the table in front of her. She clasped her hands. She waited. "4 years ago," Hawk said, "when Lily died, I came apart." He said it plainly. No performance in it. Just fact. "I don't mean I was sad. I mean I stopped functioning in the ways that matter. I stopped eating. I stopped writing. I stopped showing up for the people around me." He paused. "I was angry in a way that doesn't have a clean name. At the hospital, at the doctors, at the world in general, for being the kind of place where a 17-year-old girl can stop breathing because the people around her didn't catch it in time." Emma said nothing. She understood anger that doesn't have a clean name. "Cole brought me back," Hawk said with a nod toward the man beside him. "And the brothers, they didn't try to fix me. They just kept showing up. Every day until I started showing up too." He stopped, breathed. "And about a year after she died, I had an idea. It was small at first. We'd do a toy drive at Christmas, donate to the Children's Hospital. Something in her name. Something that made the name mean something other than a gravestone." Emma felt the sentence land in her. She didn't speak. "That was Lily's legacy," Hawk said. "It started with 12 guys, a pickup truck, and $400. That was 4 years ago." He looked at her directly. "Today, Lily's legacy has distributed over $2 million in community aid, medical assistance, and family support across 7 states. The number moved through Emma like a current. $2 million, she said quietly. "We are not what people think we are," Hawk said, and there was no defensiveness in it, just a statement offered and left on the table like a card face up. "Have some of us made mistakes? Yes. Does the name on our back carry a complicated history? Yes. But Lily's legacy operates outside all of that. It's its own thing. Clean, above board, with a board of directors and a 501c3 and a full accounting team, because I decided that if I was going to do this in my daughter's name, I was going to do it right." Emma exhaled slowly. She felt like she was doing math in her head that kept coming out larger than expected. "And here's the part," Hawk said, leaning forward slightly, "where I tell you why I really asked you here." She met his eyes. "We've been looking for someone," he said, "to run our community outreach program. It's a full-time position. It means connecting with families in need, identifying where the money goes, building relationships with local organizations, and being the face of what we do in the community." He paused. "I've interviewed 11 people in the last 6 months. All of them had the right credentials. Not one of them had what you have. Emma blinked. You don't know me, she said. It came out more bluntly than she intended, but she meant it. I know what I saw, Hawk said. You were alone. It was late. You had every reason to keep walking. You had nothing to gain and something real to lose. I found out later those were your last $8. Your last $8, Emma and you spent them on aspirin for a stranger in a Hell's Angels vest. He shook his head slowly. I can teach someone nonprofit administration. I cannot teach someone that. The room was very quiet. Emma looked at the check on the table. She looked at Hawk. She looked at her own hands. She thought about Patrice at the laundromat who communicated through sighs. She thought about refilling coffee cups for people who didn't look up. She thought about the electric bill on her kitchen counter, the inhaler that cost $38, the winter coat that was getting too small. She thought about what her grandmother had said. Kindness costs nothing, baby. But she had also learned thoroughly practically, through 2 years of doing it alone, that kindness without stability was a beautiful impulse that wore itself down to bone, that you could want to help the world and still be drowning at the same time. What does it pay? Emma asked. She said it plainly without apology because she had stopped apologizing for needing practical answers to practical questions. Hawk didn't flinch. He told her. The number was 3 times what she made at both jobs combined. Emma's face didn't change. She had learned to keep her face very still in moments that wanted to break it. But underneath the stillness, something was happening, something she didn't entirely have language for. Something that felt dangerously like the very beginning of hope, which she had learned to be cautious about because hope, when it collapsed, took everything with it. Health benefits, she said. I have a daughter with asthma. She needs consistent medication coverage. Full family coverage, Cole said from his side of the table. Effective date of hire. Emma pressed her thumbnail against her forefinger, hard, just to feel something solid. I need time, she said, to think. Hawk nodded. Take all the time you need, he said, within reason. And then something in his expression shifted a very small thing just at the corner of his eyes. How is she, he said. You're Lily. Emma looked at him. The question was quiet and genuine and came from a place she understood completely. She's good, Emma said. She's bright, she asks too many questions, and she doesn't sleep enough, and she argued with me last week about whether whales dream. A breath. She's the best thing I've ever done. Hawk smiled. A real one. The first real one she'd seen on him. It changed his face entirely. Made him look older and younger, at the same time made him look like a man who had once had something that made him smile like that regularly and who had spent 4 years learning to live in the absence of it. Yeah, he said softly. That's how it feels, isn't it? It wasn't a question. Emma didn't answer it. She didn't need to. She picked up the envelope from the table and put it in her purse. She stood. She extended her hand to Hawk and he shook it, and then, in a moment she hadn't planned and couldn't explain, she didn't let go of his hand right away. She held it for an extra second the way you hold something you want to acknowledge. He looked at her hand and then at her face and he nodded once and she let go. I'll be in touch, she said. I know you will, Hawk said. She walked out of the community hall. The 100 motorcycles were still there. Some of the men had sat back down on their bikes. Some were standing in groups talking in low voices. And when she came through the door, the talking stopped, and they watched her walk down the steps and along the sidewalk. She did not hurry. She made herself not hurry. She walked at a normal pace and kept her face steady and her shoulders back, and she did not let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened until she had turned the corner onto the next block and was out of sight. Then she stopped walking. She stood on the sidewalk and put her hand against the wall of the building beside her, and she closed her eyes and she breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Once, twice, 3 times, $25,000. Full time, health benefits, family coverage, Lily's inhaler, covered. Emma pressed her hand flat against the wall and let herself feel it, all of it. The relief and the disbelief and the fear and the want and the desperate shaking hope of it for exactly 60 seconds. She counted. She had learned to give herself 60 seconds before she put the feelings away and started thinking practically. At 60 seconds, she straightened up. She took her phone out of her pocket. She called Darnell. He picked up on the second ring. How'd it go? He said immediately. I need you to tell me I'm not crazy, Emma said. A pause. Why? What happened? She told him. All of it. The haul, the 100 bikes, the check, the job offer. She told him about Lily's legacy and the $2 million in the full benefits package. She told him about Hawk's daughter. She said the name and felt Darnell go quiet on the other end of the line. Emma, he said when she finished. I know, she said. That is, I know. Atish, are you sure it's legitimate? He said because Darnell was the kind of person who asked that question and she needed him to ask it. I'm going to verify everything, Emma said. Before I sign anything, before I cash anything, I'm going to verify every single piece of it. Good, Darnell said. Do that. A pause. But Emma, what? If it's real, he said carefully, you take it. You hear me? You don't talk yourself out of it. You don't find reasons it's too good to be true. You do your due diligence, and if it checks out, you take it. Because you've been running on empty for 2 years and you deserve a full tank. Okay, Emma's throat closed briefly. She cleared it. Okay, she said. Okay, Darnell said. Now go deposit that check and call me when it clears. She almost laughed again. This time she let herself. What Emma did not know, could not have known, walking home that morning with the envelope in her purse and Darnell's voice still in her ear, was what was happening on the other side of town. What was already in motion. Because while Emma had been inside the community hall with Hawk, Wen had made a phone call of his own. And that phone call had triggered a series of events that Emma would not learn about until she came home from school pickup that afternoon to find 3 vehicles parked in front of her building, a moving truck, a van with the logo of a furniture store, and a car she didn't recognize. She stopped on the sidewalk. Lily's hand was in hers. She looked at the vehicles. She looked up at the windows of her apartment. She could see even from the street that something was different. A light was on that she hadn't left on. Mom, Lily said, whose trucks are those? I don't know, Emma said. But she had a feeling. She had a very specific growing feeling that she was beginning to associate with a name she had only known for 48 hours. She pushed through the front door of the building and went up the stairs with Lily close behind her, and when she reached the second floor, she stopped. Her apartment door was open. Inside, she could hear movement, voices, the sound of furniture being arranged. She stepped into the doorway. The couch was new. It was a real couch, solid navy blue, with cushions that hadn't been compressed into permanent submission by years of being the only piece of furniture a tired woman could sit on at the end of a double shift. There was a rug on the floor, a warm one, the kind that actually cushioned your feet when you stepped on it. The broken kitchen chair that Emma had been meaning to replace for 8 months was gone, replaced by a full set that matched the table. A woman Emma had never seen before was directing 2 men carrying a bookshelf toward the wall where there had been bare paint. She turned when she heard Emma in the doorway. Miss Calloway, the woman said. She was in her 40s, efficient-looking with a tablet in her hand. I'm Sandra. I work with Lily's legacy. Mr. Hawk asked us to... He didn't ask me, Emma said. Her voice came out sharper than she'd intended. He didn't ask me before doing this. Sandra didn't flinch. You're right, she said evenly. And if you want us to stop and take everything out, we will do that. That's your call, and we'll respect it completely. She paused. But he asked me to give you this if you look like you might say that. She held out her tablet. On the screen was a message. Emma took it and read. It said, I know I should have asked. You would have said no. I've been where you are, the place where you're so used to doing it alone that accepting help feels like failure. It isn't failure, it's just the world finally showing up. Let it show up. Hawk, Emma must read it twice. Lily had slipped past her into the apartment and was standing in the middle of the living room, turning slowly in a full circle, taking in the new furniture and the rug and the bookshelf with an expression of complete, uncomplicated wonder. Mom, she said without turning around. Mom, is this ours? Emma watched her daughter turn in that slow circle, arms slightly out at her sides, like she was measuring the space, like she was trying to make sure it was real. Her throat tightened to the point of pain. She breathed through it. She looked at Sandra. Is there more? Emma asked. The car, Sandra said carefully, your mechanic, a Mr. Tommy at Riverside Auto, was contacted this morning. Your car has been fully repaired and the bill has been settled. Keys will be at the shop when you're ready to pick it up. Emma put one hand on the doorframe, just briefly, just for a second. Then she took it down. The medication, Emma said. Her voice was low now, almost quiet enough to be private. My daughter's inhaler. A prescription plan has been set up at Walgreens on 5th, Sandra said. Full coverage, effective immediately. Her doctor was contacted this morning with authorization. She paused. She'll never go without it again. The words "she'll never go without it again" moved through Emma like a wave of something so large she couldn't categorize it. That fear, the low, persistent nighttime fear that Lily would have an attack and Emma wouldn't have what she needed in time, had lived in Emma's body for so long, it had become background noise. A hum she had forgotten wasn't silence, and someone had just turned it off. She stood in the doorway of her apartment with an envelope worth $25,000 in her purse, and the sound of her daughter saying, "Is this ours?" in the living room behind her, and the ghost of a weight lifting off her shoulders that she had been carrying so long, she had stopped noticing it was there. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but she recognized the cadence of it immediately. It was Hawk. It said, "There's one more thing. I need to tell you what we're building, and why we need you specifically to help us build it. Can we meet again tomorrow morning?" And Mom read the message. She looked up at Sandra. She looked at Lily, who had found the new bookshelf and was running her finger along the empty shelves with an expression of pure, unhurried satisfaction, like she was already mentally filling it with the books she had been reading and rereading because they were the only ones she had. Emma typed back, "Yes, tell me where." She put the phone in her pocket. She walked into her apartment, into the apartment that felt different, now that felt inhabited, rather than merely occupied, and she sat down on the new couch. Lily came and sat beside her, immediately tucking herself under Emma's arm, the way she always did, natural and automatic, and completely without self-consciousness. "Mom," Lily said. "Yeah, the couch is really soft." "Yeah," Emma said, "it is." They sat there together in the quiet, the two of them, while Sandra and her crew finished up around them, and the afternoon light came through the window at the angle it always did, but landed on different surfaces, now surfaces that were solid and new and clean. Emma thought about what Hawk had said. There's one more thing. She thought about what a man who had already given her $25,000 a job offer, a furnished apartment, a repaired car, and her daughter's medication considered to be one more thing. She thought about the words Lily's legacy, about what it meant to build something out of grief, about what it meant to take the worst thing that ever happened to you and turn it into the best thing you could offer the world. She thought about her grandmother, about the principle passed down like a handed-down coat that fit better the older she got. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. She had spent $8 on aspirin and water on a Tuesday night on the way home from a diner. And the world that had been grinding her down quietly for 2 years, taking more than it gave, asking more than it offered, had turned around and looked at her. She did not know yet what the one more thing was. She did not know that tomorrow's meeting would show her something so large it would reframe not just her future, but her understanding of what one person's choice could set in motion. She did not know what Hawk had been building toward, what the months of planning had been moving toward, what Cole had been quietly organizing behind the scenes while Hawk recovered in the hospital, and thought about a woman who had stopped on a cold Tuesday night and refused to look away. She didn't know any of that yet, but she was going to find out. And for the first time in a very long time, she was not afraid of what came next. The address Hawk sent her was a vacant lot on the corner of Meridian and 5th. Emma had passed it 100 times. It was the kind of place that cities accumulate a gap between buildings, fenced off, overgrown, forgotten. A place that had been something once and then stopped being anything and stayed that way for long enough that people stopped seeing it. She arrived at 9:50. Hawk was already there, standing outside the fence with Cole and 2 other men she recognized from the community hall. There was also a woman she hadn't seen before, mid-40s, sharp eyes, a blazer over dark jeans, holding a rolled-up document under her arm like it was something important. Emma stopped in front of Hawk. "What are we looking at?" she said, nodding at the lot. "What it could be," Hawk said. The woman with the document stepped forward. "I'm Carol Marsh," she said, extending her hand. "I'm the architect working with Lily's legacy on the Clark House project. I've been waiting to meet you." Emma shook her hand. "Clark House," she said. "Wait for this street," Cole said. "Meridian and Clark if we acquire the adjacent property. which as of yesterday, he looked at Hawk. We did. Hawk nodded once. Confirmed. Emma looked at the lot. She looked at the rolled document. She looked at Hawk. Tell me what it is, she said. Hawk turned to face the fence. When he spoke, his voice had the particular quality of someone describing something they have been carrying in their mind for a very long time and are finally setting down in front of another person. A community center, he said, full service, job training, medical care, a children's program, emergency family assistance, a food pantry that operates 5 days a week, a place where people who are one bad month away from losing everything can come and get what they need without shame, without paperwork that takes 6 weeks, and a caseworker who treats them like a number. He paused. A place where somebody like you 3 years ago could have walked in and gotten help before you got to your last $8. The words landed in Emma's chest like a stone in still water. Rings spreading outward. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How far along is the planning?" Carol unrolled the document. It was an architectural rendering, detailed, professional, clearly the product of months of work. Emma looked at it. She took it in room by room, space by space, the way she had always processed information, practically specifically looking for the edges where intention met reality. The building's planned at 14,000 square feet, Carol said. Ground floor is medical and intake. Second floor is job training and classrooms. There's a children's area built into the ground floor plan, adjacent to the medical suite, so parents can be seen while their kids are supervised. She paused. The children's area was specifically designed for kids with chronic conditions, asthma, diabetes, kids whose parents can't afford consistent specialist care. Emma's eyes stopped moving across the rendering. She looked up at Hawk. He was watching her. He had been watching her the whole time. "I told you there was one more thing," he said. "You designed the children's area around kids with asthma," Emma said. It wasn't a question. It was a recognition. "After Lily," Hawk said simply. "We couldn't catch her attack in time because she didn't have consistent specialist access. Her inhaler prescription had lapsed. Her follow-up appointment had been canceled twice because I was on the road and her mother was working double shifts." His jaw tightened briefly, loosened. She fell through every crack the system had. "I am done with a world that has those cracks." Emma stood very still. She was doing something she had learned to do in her 2 years of single motherhood, feeling something enormous while simultaneously thinking something practical. The two processes running in parallel, neither interfering with the other. "What do you need from me?" Emma asked. Specifically, not the job title. What do you actually need me to do? Hawk almost smiled. "That's the right question," he said. "I need you to be the bridge between us, between Lily's legacy, which carries baggage whether we like it or not, and the community. The families. The people who would benefit from this place but who see our vests and take a step back. I need someone they'll trust. I need someone who knows what it feels like to need help and be too proud or too scared to ask for it." He looked at her directly. "I need you." Emma folded her hands. She thought about it the way her grandmother had taught her to think about important things from the inside out, not the outside in. Not what did it look like, but what did it mean? Not what would people say, but what was actually true. "I want to talk to the families you've already helped," Emma said. "Before I commit to anything, I want to hear from the people on the receiving end of what Lily's legacy does. Not testimonials, real conversations." "Arranged by end of week," Cole said without hesitation. "And I want to understand the financials," Emma said. "The full picture, where the money comes from, how decisions are made, who has oversight. I need to know this is what you say it is." "I'll have our board chair call you today," Hawk said. "Dr. Patricia Ewan. She's a former city councilwoman. She's been on the board since year 1. She will answer every question you have without me in the room." He paused. "I want you to verify this independently. I'm asking you to trust me, which means I have to give you the means to trust me. That's how it works." Emma looked at him for a long moment. Something was settling in her. Not all at once, it wasn't a sudden certainty, but rather a gradual stilling, like water finding level. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you'll consider it," Hawk said. "Or okay, you're in." Emma looked at the rendering in Carol's hands. She looked at the lot. She looked at the space where something was going to be built, something real, something that would be there in 5 years, in 10 years, something children would walk into and receive care they couldn't otherwise access and go home healthier because of it. She thought about Lily running her finger along the empty bookshelf. Is this ours? Mom, okay, I'm in, Emma said. Contingent on the verification. But in. Cole let out a breath he'd been holding. Danny at the edge of the group said something quietly to Reese that Emma didn't catch, but that sounded like finally. Hawk extended his hand. Emma shook it. This time she let go at the normal moment. But she held his eyes a beat longer than necessary, and what passed between them was not complicated. It was just an acknowledgement. Two people who had each survived something and come out the other side and were choosing right now in front of a chain-link fence in a vacant lot on the corner of Meridian and 5th to do something with what they'd survived. That afternoon, Emma called Patrice at the laundromat. She had been dreading it all morning. Patrice was not unkind. She was just compressed, running a business on thin margins, communicating through sighs because full sentences took longer. Emma liked her in the way you like someone who has been reliably present in your life, even if the interaction is never warm. Patrice, Emma said when she answered, I need to give you my notice. Silence. A beat. Emma? I know, I'm sorry for the short notice. I'll work through the end of the week and train whoever you need me to train. Another beat. Then Patrice said, Is it a better situation? Yes, Emma said. Good, Patrice said. Her voice was still compressed, but something in it had shifted almost imperceptibly. You've been working too hard for too little. It was only a matter of time. Emma blinked. Thank you, Patrice. Come in tomorrow, Patrice said, already back to business. Help me with the schedule before you go. The Manny's diner call was harder. Not because of Manny himself. He was a decent man who paid his staff on time and never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself, but because Emma had spent enough evenings in that diner that it meant something. She had memorized the regulars' orders. She knew which tables wobbled and which coffee pot ran hot. She had cried in the walk-in freezer after a bad day once, just for 2 minutes, just to put it somewhere, before she had to go back out and refill cups and smile. Manny was quiet when she told him. Then he said, You're going to do good things, Emma. You already are. Come back and see us. I will, she said, and she meant it. That Thursday, Dr. Patricia Ewan called at precisely 2 in the afternoon. Emma was sitting at her kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen because she had decided to do this the old-fashioned way, to write down what she was told and sit with it rather than looking things up on a phone while someone was talking. Dr. Ewan was sharp, measured, and direct in the manner of someone who had spent decades in public service and had zero patience for anything that wasn't straight. She walked Emma through the foundation structure, its funding sources, a combination of individual donors, corporate partnerships, and chapter fundraising, its audit history, its board composition, and its program outcomes. She cited figures without being asked. She volunteered the name of the external auditing firm. She told Emma exactly what the community outreach coordinator role had been intended to accomplish and why the previous candidates hadn't worked out. We kept hiring people with the right resume and the wrong instinct, Dr. Ewan said. Hawk finally stopped looking at resumes. He barely knows me, Emma said. He knows what you did, Dr. Ewan said, and frankly, so do I. I've been involved with Lily's legacy since the beginning, Ms. Calloway. I've sat across from a lot of people who say they want to help communities. Very few of them have spent their last $8 proving it. Emma pressed her pen against the legal pad. Is the organization legitimate, she asked. Directly, because that was the question, and Dr. Ewan was the person to answer it. Completely, Dr. Ewan said with no hesitation and no performance. I would not have lent my name to it for 4 years if it weren't. When Emma hung up, she sat quietly for a moment. Then she looked at her legal pad filled with notes in her own handwriting. She looked at the new bookshelf against the wall, still mostly empty. She looked at the inhaler on Lily's windowsill, a full one picked up yesterday from Walgreens, covered entirely, no copay, no calculation. She picked up her phone and texted Hawk. She checks out. Every piece of it. I'm ready to start. His reply came back in under a minute. Monday morning, Cole will send you the address. And Emma, thank you, again. She put the phone down. She sat with that for a moment. Then she picked up the legal pad and started making a list, not of debts or calculations or things she couldn't afford, but of ideas, of what she knew about the neighborhood, of which families she'd seen at the laundromat running clothes they could barely afford to wash, of the woman at Lily's school who had 3 kids and no car and always looked like she was holding something back, of the elderly man 2 floors down who she'd overheard on the phone twice in 6 months sounding confused about his medication. She wrote for 40 minutes without stopping. The weekend passed in a way that felt different from any weekend Emma could remember in recent history. Not because anything dramatic happened, it was ordinary in most respects. She took Lily to the park. She cooked a real dinner on Saturday night, something with more than 2 ingredients, something that took longer than 20 minutes. She called her friend Rosa, who she hadn't spoken to in 3 weeks because she never had the energy at the end of her shifts. She slept 8 hours on Saturday night and did not set an alarm. It was the alarm that got her, the not setting it. She lay in bed on Sunday morning, and the absence of the 5:30 alarm was so disorienting, so genuinely foreign, that she was awake anyway by 5:45, lying in the dark with her eyes open, waiting for something that wasn't coming. And then she realized it wasn't coming, and then she lay there for another hour not sleeping, but for once not worrying either, just existing in the quiet of an early Sunday in her apartment, with its new couch and its warm rug, listening to her daughter breathe steadily in the next room. Monday morning she dressed carefully, not her uniform, not her worn sneakers. She put on the good blouse and the dark pants and the boots that she had bought 18 months ago at a second-hand store for $12, and that were better quality than anything she'd bought new in years. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked like herself, not a version of herself that had been compressed by exhaustion, just herself present and steady. She kissed Lily goodbye at the school bus corner. Lily hugged her the usual 3 seconds and then looked up at her. "You look different," Lily said. "Different how?" Lily considered. "Like when the turtle nightlight is on," she said, "like there's light inside." Emma stood on the sidewalk and watched the school bus pull away and did not cry, but it was a near thing. The Lily's Legacy office was in a converted storefront on Archer Avenue. Nothing fancy, nothing that announced itself, just a clean space with good lighting and people who were clearly used to working hard without a lot of ceremony. Cole met her at the door and walked her in and introduced her to the staff. 6 people in total, a lean team running a $2 million operation with the kind of focused efficiency that comes from caring about what you're doing. The desk they showed her to was by the window. There was a coffee maker in the back, and someone had left a mug on her desk that said "World's Okayest Human" on it, and she looked at it for a second and then laughed a real laugh, uncalculated, the kind that comes up before you can decide about it. "Reese picked it out," Cole said with the expression of a man who was not responsible for Reese. She sat down. She looked at the desk. She opened her notebook to the list she had written on Friday evening. And then Emma Calloway, who had been running on empty for 2 years, put her pen on the page and got to work. 2 weeks in, she had already contacted 11 families. She had found them the way she knew how to find them, not through databases, but through the places where people who needed help actually went. The laundromat, the bus line, the school pickup corner. She talked to them the way she knew how to talk to people who had learned to be cautious about help that came with conditions honestly, practically, without overselling, without the particular brand of institutional cheerfulness that reads as false to anyone who has dealt with institutions long enough to know the difference. She told them what Lily's Legacy was. She told them what it wasn't. She answered the hard questions, the ones about who was behind it, the ones about the vests, the ones about whether there was a catch. She answered them every time with the same patience and the same honesty. And then at the end of the second week, something happened that she hadn't seen coming. She was at her desk on a Friday afternoon when her office phone rang. She picked it up. The voice on the other end was a woman, older, tight-voiced, clearly nervous. "Is this Emma Calloway?" the woman said. "It is," Emma said. "My name is Carol Demers. I live on Hanover Street. My grandson, he's 9. He has severe asthma, and I'm raising him alone, and I heard—" The woman stopped, steadied herself. "I heard you were the person to call. I heard you'd understand." Emma leaned forward. "Mrs. Demers," she said, and her voice was very steady and very calm and full of everything she knew about what it felt like to be on the other end of a situation that was too big to carry alone. "Tell me what's happening. I'm listening." She listened for 22 minutes. She asked questions. She took notes. She told Mrs. Demers exactly what Lily's Legacy could do and by when, and she said, "I'm going to follow up with you personally, not a form. not an automated message me by Tuesday at the latest. After she hung up, she sat for a moment. She looked at her notebook. She looked at the mug. She thought about a principle passed down like an inheritance. Kindness costs nothing, baby, but it can change everything. She had believed it. She had acted on it. And now she was sitting in an office where she got to make it true for other people one phone call at a time. She picked up her pen. She added Mrs. Demers to the list. Then Hawk knocked on her open office door. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the back. He set one on her desk. He looked at the list, the long, growing, 2-sided page of names and needs and follow-up dates. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at the list. Then he looked at her. How many this week? He said. 11 families contacted, 7 committed to intake appointments, 2 in urgent medical need. I've already flagged them for Carol's team. She paused. And I just got off the phone with a grandmother on Hanover Street raising a 9-year-old with severe asthma alone. Hawk was quiet, just for a beat. You'll take care of it. By Tuesday, Emma said. He picked up his coffee. He looked at the window for a moment. Then he said quietly to no one in particular and to both of them at once, this is what she would have done. Lily. She would have done exactly this. I'm Monty, my mom. Emma looked at him and at him. She thought about a 7-year-old with foxes on her pajamas asking if the new couch was theirs. She thought about a 17-year-old girl who had fallen through every crack and a father who had spent 4 years filling them. I know, Emma said softly. I think that's why it works. Hawk nodded. He took his coffee and walked back down the hall. Emma turned back to her list. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, moving loud, indifferent, urgent, full of people carrying things they shouldn't have to carry alone. And Emma McCalloway, for the first time in a very long time, felt entirely solidly equal to it. 3 months after Emma started at Lily's Legacy, the list on her desk had grown from 2 pages to 11. She had stopped counting the individual names somewhere around week 6, not because she'd stopped caring, but because the counting had become less important than the doing. There were families, and they had needs, and she was the person who connected those 2 things. That was the work. She had gotten very good at it, very fast, in the way you get good at things that feel like they were always yours to do. Cole noticed it first. He came into her office one morning with his coffee and his calm eyes and said, "You're not learning this job. You already knew it." Emma looked up from her desk. "I knew the need," she said. "That's different from knowing the job." "Is it?" Cole said, and left her to think about that. She thought about it for 2 days. And she decided he was right, and that it mattered, and that the distinction was worth paying attention to, because knowing the need from the inside was exactly what made the difference between a program that helped people on paper and one that actually reached them where they were. Emma reached people where they were. She spoke their language because it had been her language. She knew which questions felt like help and which ones felt like interrogation. She knew when to push and when to simply sit with someone in the hard thing they were carrying until they were ready to put it down. Mrs. Demers called her back on a Tuesday as promised. Emma had already arranged a full intake appointment, a specialist referral for the grandson whose name was Marcus, which Emma noted quietly and said nothing about, and an emergency prescription bridge for his inhaler that would keep him covered until the insurance paperwork cleared. Mrs. Demers cried on the phone, not dramatically, just the quiet releasing kind of crying that happens when something you've been holding tightly for too long is finally taken from your arms. Nobody ever called back before, Mrs. Demers said. I've called so many places. Nobody ever called back. Emma pressed her pen flat on her desk. We call back, she said, every time. After she hung up, she sat for a moment. Then she walked down the hall to Hawk's office and knocked on the open door. He was on the phone, but he held up one finger and finished the call quickly. We need a dedicated follow-up protocol, Emma said before she'd fully sat down. Something systematic. Right now it's all relational, which works when I'm here, but if I'm out sick or we scale this program, people fall through. Same cracks, different system. Hawk looked at her. Write it up, he said. I already started, Emma said. She put 4 pages of notes on his desk. He looked at them. He looked at her. How long have you been thinking about this, he asked. Since Mrs. Demers said nobody ever called back, Emma said. Hawk picked up the pages. He read them, actually read them, not skimmed, and when he looked up, his expression had the quality it got when something landed where he hadn't expected it to. This is good, he said. This is really good. I know, Emma said simply and went back to her desk. The Clark House groundbreaking was scheduled for a Saturday morning in early spring. Emma had been involved in the planning since week 3 of her job, not just as an attendee, but as one of the primary organizers of the community outreach around it. She had spent 6 weeks making sure the people who most needed to know about Clark House actually knew. Not through flyers, through conversations, through showing up at the places where people were and telling them directly face to face what was being built and why and who it was for. She had talked to 200 families. She had done it personally. Hawk had offered her 2 additional staff members to help with the outreach, and she had taken one of them, a young woman named Priya, who had the right instincts and learned fast, and sent the second back with a note that said, "We don't need more people yet. We need better depth." Cole had shown Hawk the note. Hawk had laughed for the first time in front of Emma, a real laugh, sudden and unguarded. She had looked up from her retic across the hall, startled, and he had held up the note, and she had shrugged and gone back to work. The night before the groundbreaking, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed in her apartment, which still felt different in a way she had stopped actively noticing and started simply living in, and she ran through the next day in her mind. Not with anxiety, just with attention. Going over the timeline, the speaking order, the families she had personally invited, and who had confirmed they were coming. At some point, Lily appeared in the doorway in her fox pajamas. "You're thinking loud again," Lily said. Emma moved over. Lily climbed in beside her and arranged herself the way she always did, tucked under Emma's arm, her cheek against Emma's shoulder. "Big day tomorrow," Emma said. "The building," Lily said. "The groundbreaking?" "Yeah." Lily was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Is Hawk going to be there?" "Yes," Emma said. "I want to meet him," Lily said. "You talk about him at dinner sometimes. Not a lot, but sometimes." Emma looked at the ceiling. "You can meet him tomorrow." "Does he know about me?" Lily asked. Emma thought about that, about the way Hawk had asked how she was your Lily sitting in a community hall surrounded by 100 motorcycles before he'd said anything else. About the children's area in Carol's architectural rendering specifically designed for kids with chronic conditions. About the way his foundation was named for a girl who had died too young from the same thing that Emma checked Lily's breathing for every night before she went to sleep. "He knows about you," Emma said quietly. "He's known about you from the beginning." Lily absorbed this with the calm that 7-year-olds sometimes have about profound things. "Okay," she said. Then Mom, yeah. "You are happy now." She said it not as a question, but as an observation. The way Lily said most things directly with the clear eyes of someone who had been watching carefully and was now reporting back what she'd seen. Emma tightened her arm around her daughter. "Yeah," she said. "I am." "Phew," Lily said, and then within 4 minutes she was asleep. Emma lay awake for a while longer. She thought about a Tuesday night in a gas station and a gray face on the concrete. She thought about 42 cents and a bus to catch. She thought about how small the moment had been, how ordinary the choice, how unremarkable the action. A woman who was tired and broke and needed to get home turned around and helped a stranger. That was all. That was the whole thing. And look where it had gone. She fell asleep thinking about her grandmother, about the way she used to say it, sitting at her kitchen table with her hands wrapped around her coffee cup, looking at Emma over the rim with that steady, certain gaze. "Kindness costs nothing, baby. But it can change everything." She hadn't understood it fully then. She understood it now. The groundbreaking morning was clear and cold, the kind of weather that sharpens everything's sound color, the edge of things. Emma arrived at the Meridian and 5th Lot at 8:30, an hour before the event. Priya was already there managing setup. A small stage had been assembled near the fence. Chairs had been arranged in rows. A podium stood at the front with a microphone that was being tested and retested by a nervous young man from the AV company. People started arriving at 9, slowly at first, then steadily, then in a way that made Emma stop what she was doing and simply watch. Because these were not dignitaries or donors or people who had been sent a formal invitation. These were the families she had talked to. Mrs. Demers was there with Marcus beside her, a small, serious boy in a blue jacket. The woman from Lily's school, who had 3 kids and no car, had gotten a ride from someone Emma didn't recognize. The elderly man from Emma's building was there in a coat that was freshly pressed, like he had decided this was an occasion that merited it. By 9:30, there were over 150 people. Priya appeared at Emma's elbow. "Did you expect this many?" I hoped, Emma said. Then the motorcycles arrived. 30 of them rolling in two by two, parking along the perimeter of the lot in a row that the crowd watched with an initial wariness that Emma had come to recognize. The pause, the held breath, the instinctive step back. She watched it happen. She watched it change. Because the men who got off those bikes moved through the crowd with the ease of people who had been doing community work long enough to know how to be present without being imposing. They shook hands. They talked to kids. Reese crouched down to eye level with a 3-year-old who was staring at his vest with enormous eyes and said something that made the child laugh so hard she grabbed his beard. The wariness didn't vanish, but it softened, measurably, visibly in real time. Emma filed that away. It mattered. It was the whole point. Hawk spoke first. He walked to the podium with the careful deliberateness of a man who was still 3 months out from a heart attack and was not going to let that show, but was also not foolish enough to ignore it. He stood at the microphone and looked at the crowd, at all of it, the families and the bikers and the city officials and the kids in their school jackets, and he was quiet for a moment before he spoke. 4 years ago, he said, my daughter died. She was 17. She was the best person I ever knew, and she died because the systems that were supposed to catch her didn't. She fell through, and I spent a year being furious about that, which was the right thing to feel, and then I decided that fury wasn't enough, that I could be angry or I could build something, and you can't do both at the same time, so I chose to build. The crowd was absolutely still. This lot, Hawk said, is going to become the thing she needed, the thing a lot of your families needed, the thing that should have existed already. He paused. It's going to be called Clark House. And the reason it exists, the reason we got here, starts with one person who made one choice on a Tuesday night with $8 in her pocket. He looked directly at Emma in the crowd. Emma Calloway, would you come up here? Emma had known she would be speaking. She had prepared remarks. They were in her jacket pocket, folded twice, and as she walked toward the stage, she had every intention of using them. She got to the podium. She looked at the crowd. She saw Mrs. Demers in the 3rd row with Marcus beside her. She saw Darnell, who had come because she had asked him and because he was the kind of person who showed up when it mattered. She saw Lily standing with Priya at the edge of the crowd in her good coat, watching her mother with that particular expression. She had the one that was all attention and no performance. Emma reached into her pocket. She felt the folded paper. She left it there. She looked at the microphone. I'm not good at speeches, she said, so I'm going to say the thing instead of the speech. A beat. 3 months ago, I was working 2 jobs. I had $8 to my name. I was tired in the way you get tired when you've been doing it alone for a long time and you can't see the part where it gets easier. She paused. Most of you know exactly what I'm talking about, and I can tell by your faces. A few people nodded. An older woman in the 4th row pressed her lips together in the way that means yes, and I don't want to cry about it. I helped someone, Emma said. I did it because my grandmother told me to. Because she told me kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. And I believed her even on the nights when I had trouble believing anything else. She stopped, breathed. What happened to me after that, the check, all of it, I'm not telling you that story because I think kindness is a transaction. I'm not telling you if you're good enough, the universe will pay you back. That's not how it works, and we all know it. She looked at the crowd. I'm telling you because I want you to understand what this place is. Clark House is not charity. It's not pity. It's not a system deciding what you deserve. Her voice steadied. It's people who know what the hard side of life feels like, deciding that other people shouldn't have to feel it alone. That's all it is. And it starts here. The applause was not polite. It was the kind that comes from a place deeper than courtesy, the kind that happens when something true is said in public and the people who needed to hear it recognize it. Emma stepped back from the podium. Hawk was standing to her left. He looked at her and said quietly enough that only she could hear it. That was better than what you had written. You don't know what I had written, Emma said. No, he said, but that was better. Then he extended the ceremonial shovel toward her. She took it, and she drove it into the ground on the corner of Meridian and 5th with every bit of the weight she had been carrying for 2 years, in the fullness of what she was building toward, and the crowd cheered, and Marcus from Hanover Street clapped with his whole arms the way 9-year-olds do. And Darnell put two fingers in his mouth and whistled. And from the edge of the crowd, a small girl in a good coat jumped up and down twice and then composed herself because she was 7 and she was her mother's daughter and she had learned to feel big things with dignity. Emma handed the shovel back. She walked off the stage. She crossed the crowd and went to where Lily was standing, and Lily took her hand without being asked. "That was good, Mom," Lily said. "Thank you, baby," Emma said. They stood together while the ceremony continued, and at some point Hawk made his way through the crowd and stopped in front of them. He looked at Lily. Lily looked at him. She was not afraid of him in the slightest. She studied him with the frank, unfiltered assessment of a child who is deciding about a person. "You're Hawk," she said. "I am," he said. "My name's Lily," she said. Something moved across Hawk's face fast, deep, the kind of thing that lives below the surface of a person and only rises in specific moments. He controlled it completely, but his eyes were bright. "I know," he said. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." Lily looked at him carefully for another second. Then she said, "My mom says you named your foundation after your daughter." "I did," Hawk said. "That was a good idea," Lily said with the absolute conviction of someone who had thought about it and reached a conclusion. She would have liked knowing that. Hawk was quiet for a moment. He looked at this 7-year-old standing in her good coat, with her dark eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin and the matter-of-fact certainty of someone who had grown up watching her mother face hard things without looking away. "Yeah," he said. His voice was rough at the edges in a way he didn't try to hide. "I think she would have." The months that followed moved differently than any months Emma had lived through before. Not faster, not slower, just differently. Fuller. She had spent so long operating in a mode where every day was a negotiation with scarcity that abundance, even modest working abundance, the kind that just meant enough felt foreign for a while. She kept waiting for the bottom to drop out. She kept doing the old math in her head, automatically calculating what she couldn't afford, then catching herself and recalibrating. It took 4 months for the habit to start loosening. She noticed the moment it happened, a Tuesday afternoon, standing in a grocery store reaching for the name brand version of something without first checking the price. A small thing, but the fact that she did it without thinking, without the calculation firing automatically, that was the sign. She stood in that grocery store aisle and held a box of crackers and let herself feel it. Not triumph, not relief, just arrival, the sense of having gotten somewhere. Clark House broke ground in spring. By summer, the frame was up. By fall, the walls. Emma went to the site every Thursday to walk it with Carol and track the progress. She brought Lily once on a weekend, and Lily stood in the middle of the concrete subfloor that would become the children's area and turned in a slow circle, the same way she had turned in the living room of the newly furnished apartment, with her arms slightly out at her sides, measuring something invisible. "It's going to be big," Lily said. "It is," Emma said. "Good," Lily said. "It should be big." The opening was set for the following March, 14 months after a Tuesday night at a gas station on Callaway Street. Emma oversaw the final weeks of preparation with the same focused, rolling attention she brought to everything practically specifically, always looking for the edges where intention met reality. She hired 3 intake coordinators. She trained them herself. She wrote the follow-up protocol she had proposed to Hawk in week 3, refined it 4 times, and implemented it so thoroughly that within the first week of soft operations, they had a 92% callback completion rate. Hawk saw the number. He walked into her office with his coffee. He looked at the number on her whiteboard. 92, he said. "Working on the other 8, Emma said without looking up. "Yamahoame," he said. She looked up. "Lily would have loved you," he said. Simply, directly, the way he said all true things. Emma held that for a moment. She thought about a girl who had been 17 and bright and gone too soon, and a father who had turned the worst thing into the best thing he knew how to build. She thought about her grandmother at her kitchen table with her coffee and her steady eyes. She thought about 42 cents in a parking lot and a bus she'd caught with 45 seconds to spare and the ordinary Tuesday night that had turned out to be the last ordinary Tuesday of her life. "I know," Emma said. "I think I would have loved her too." On the morning of the Clark House opening, Emma arrived first. Before the staff, before Hawk, before anyone. She stood alone in the space in the clean, finished, fully equipped space that had been a vacant lot 14 months ago, and she was quiet for a long time. She thought about everything it had taken, not just the money and the building and the permits and the planning, everything before that. Every double shift, every skipped lunch, every tight calculation in the grocery store. Every night she had lain awake listening to Lily breathe and running the numbers and finding them short. Every day she had gotten up anyway. Every day she had chosen in her grandmother's tradition to lead with kindness even when she had nothing left to give it from. She thought about the $8. She pulled out her phone. She took a picture of the room, the empty room, before anyone arrived, before it became what it was built to be. She sent it to Darnell with no caption. He replied in 30 seconds. A single line. Go get them, Emma. She put her phone in her pocket. The doors opened at 10. By 10:15, the first family walked in. A mother and two kids, one of whom was a boy in a blue jacket who looked around with enormous eyes and held his mother's hand. Emma was at the intake desk. She stood up. Welcome to Clark House, she said. My name is Emma. Tell me what you need. The mother looked at her, that particular look Emma had learned to recognize, the one that held wariness and hope in uneasy balance, the look of someone who had been let down by enough systems to approach new ones carefully. Emma held the woman's gaze and kept her expression steady and open and completely without the particular brand of institutional condescension that she had spent years learning to identify and eliminate from every interaction she had. And the woman's shoulders came down just slightly, just enough. I don't even know where to start, the woman said quietly. That's okay, Emma said. That's what I'm here for. She pulled out a chair. Sit down, we have time. That evening, after the last family had left and the staff had gone home and the lights were dimmed in the building that had been built from grief and turned into grace, Hawk sat across from Emma at one of the intake tables with 2 cups of coffee between them and a quiet that had earned itself. First day, he said. 43 families, Emma said. 11 urgent medical referrals, 7 job training enrollments, 22 children registered in the children's program. She paused. And one 9-year-old boy named Marcus who asked me if he could come back on Saturday. Hawk looked at his coffee cup. What did you tell him? I told him we'd be here, Emma said. He nodded slowly. The quiet stretched between them. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. Inside, something had changed, not loudly, not all at once, but completely. Emma thought about what her grandmother had said. She had been hearing it her whole life in one form or another, carrying it through the years like a coin she kept reaching into her pocket to check was still there. She had tested it in the hardest way available with her last $8 on a Tuesday night on a concrete floor next to a stranger. It had turned out to be true, not as a transaction, not as a reward, but as something truer and older and more reliable than either, as the fundamental fact that a single human being choosing to see another human being can set in motion something that neither of them could have reached alone. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. Emma Calloway had proven it with $8 in a decision made in 30 seconds on a cold Tuesday night. And the proof was 43 families and a boy named Marcus who wanted to come back on Saturday, in a room full of light where there had been a vacant lot and a foundation named for a girl who never got the chance to do what Emma was doing in her name. The proof was here. The proof was built. The proof was open. And it was just getting started.